Welcome to Radio KAL, the Superman podcast brought to you by supermanhomepage.com. This is show number 112, released on April 30th, 2014. My name is Steve Eunice, and joining me as always is my good friend Scotty V. Hey, Scotty.
Hello, Steve. What's happening, everyone? How's it going?
Yeah, going well. We've had, since our last podcast, there's been, the Easter break. There's been a little bit of news around about the upcoming movie and some big announcements here, there, and everywhere about certain things going on in the Superman world. So I think we should just get straight into it and power on through.
Let's do it.
Well, first up, and kind of breaking news for us, as we are about to, as we're recording this, it kind of just happened. The Justice League movie has been announced. Warner Brothers has confirmed that Zack Snyder will follow up the Superman-Batman movie with a Justice League film. It was announced in a Wall Street Journal report. What do you make of this?
Well, I think that most of us were kind of along the assumption that was what they were trying to work up to. My concern, obviously, is that we still haven't yet seen how successful this follow-up Superman/Batman movie is going to be. But obviously, it's exciting. We're getting at least word of more DC Universe films, and that's good.
Yeah. No, well, it says on the report that this will be a further expansion of this universe, which was a quote by Mr. Greg Silverman, president of worldwide production at Warner Brothers. He says that the Superman-Batman movie will lead into the Justice League film, that Henry Cavill, Zack, Ben Affleck, Gal Gadot will all be returning in their roles for that film. That says the script is still in development, and Warner Brothers has not set a release date, though the movie is unlikely to come out before 2018. Mr. Silverman would not comment on what other heroes might join Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman in the movie. However, we do know, obviously, that Cyborg has been included in this upcoming film, which is something that we will also speak about. So big things in the future for the DC universe of films.
Now, it looks like, at least according to the Wall Street Journal report, that the quote from Mr. Silverman was an exact quote, and that he does refer to the movie as Superman versus Batman. I don't know if, as big as he is in the company, whatever his actual position is, does he really not know that isn't actually the title, or are we being told kind of offhandedly that is the title, and that he kind of slipped up a little bit there?
Oh, probably it's the title that people have been using, and the title that even Zack Snyder and that have used. But it's still, it goes above that, says sequel tentatively titled Batman versus Superman. Maybe he just doesn't want to, like they've been told, when we refer to this movie, until we actually name the official title, just keep referring to it as either Batman versus Superman or Superman versus Batman. So, in the Silverman's quote, he's got Superman first, but in the sentence or paragraph above, they've got Batman first. So, I guess it's still up in the air or unannounced.
Yes, well, I like the idea of the Superman-Batman movie with a slash in the center, because I've talked to a lot of people, and for the most part, unless you're a die-hard Batman should beat up Superman fan, mm-hmm. I think that most people kind of find it an odd choice and aren't that interested in seeing a Superman versus Batman movie. It just seems silly to most people that I've talked to, and it not only does it seem outlandish that a guy in a suit would pick a fight with a super Kryptonian, but the idea that these guys are two heroes, why are we going to see a movie where they're going to be versus each other? But we've talked about this kind of thing before. What I was recently in a email conversation with someone who seems to like my Great Scott segments and watches the Speeding Bulletin, but seems to be kind of a detractor for Man of Steel and not very not a fan of it, and not a fan of Zack Snyder or Henry Cavill. Didn't appreciate it at all. So where his point of view is, anything negative that can be said he'll quickly point it out. Whereas many people would probably say on my end, if there's anything positive to say, I'll kind of gloss over the negative and say the positive. I don't feel that I do that. I try to be pragmatic as much as I can. But he sent me an article. I forget where it was from, but it was an investor article talking about return on investment of superhero
I got that one too.
So you know the one I'm talking about, and it has the top 10 superhero films, and Man of Steel's like 9, and it's a negative 1 point something percentage return on investment. And the only numbers that I'm aware of that are actually released are the production budget, which is something like $260 million, and the movie made $668 million. Yeah. So in my view, that means it cleared $400 million.
Exactly.
This article tells us, and someone asked a question in the comments in this article, why are you saying that Man of Steel didn't make a profit? And I guess he had some idea of what the marketing budget is. And I've never been clear on whether, I always hear different things from different directors when I read reports. Oh, that's outlandishly high. That's, no one actually knows. It didn't cost anything near that much. And we include our marketing budget in the production budget. And then I hear other people say that they're two separate budgets. And either way, it sounds like in order for it to be a negative percentage, that means the marketing cost them more than making the movie, which just sounds crazy to me. But the rest of that list, it makes sense. And it also makes sense that, and we've said this before, that Warner Brothers would want to try to get some sort of a team together so that after the fact, when they expand out, just like Marvel is continuing to do, the single films will be that much more popular. If you look at Captain America, the first Avenger was not that successful, but the second one is doing gangbusters at the box office. Batman Begins was not that successful, but the second one is doing did a huge amount of business. But the difference between Captain America and the second Batman movie is Captain America is connected to like 9 other movies. Yeah. So it's really like a 10th sequel in a franchise that includes every other hero in the Marvel Avengers universe, and not really just a second Captain America movie. But we haven't yet gotten the chance to see a second Man of Steel movie, which, for all we know, could do just as well as the second Batman movie did. So exactly. I think obviously they want to get to this. They want to get to teams. They want to. I'm sure if these things are successful, we'll see a Wonder Woman standalone, a new Batman franchise, and hopefully continuing Superman films.
Yeah, exactly. No, I saw that article and was like bemused at where they came up with that, because we also know that Man of Steel made something like $100 million, not $100 million. What was it, like $100,000 or something like that in merchandising, like things like advertising, doing things like the shave, how does he shave thing, and all those kinds of tie-ins. The what was the Burger King with the ad that they did for that, and all the different other merchandising connections with the movie itself. All the advertising that went with it were absolutely huge. There were a lot of TV tie-ins, TV commercials, product commercials, things like that. I think it was $100,000 on top of, which was like a record at the time. So yeah, where these figures come from, I have no idea.
Yeah, I'm sure that there are figures and that people estimate them. I don't think we've ever heard, even with Superman Returns, Bryan Singer still is bemused by the fact that people try and say you spent this much money, and he'll come out and say, well, the budget was $160 million or whatever. So I'm not sure where the number that these people are giving you is coming from, but we didn't spend near that much, and so I think that happens with all these kinds of movies, and for some reason, you look at the rest of that list, and all the other movies seem to be faring pretty well. I'm not sure where the Man of Steel figures come from, or why they're so different than all the others. But it's still on the top 10 of all time as far as money made at the box office. So I guess that's still a good thing. But I wouldn't say that the reason they're necessarily going away from a direct follow-up is because they're not confident in Superman, but more so because they see how beneficial it can be to all the single heroes if they do each movie within a universe where they're all included, so that you see them in more than one movie, so that the general audience goes, well, now I got to go see this one, because it almost becomes like watching a serial or something where you can't miss one without being confused to
Yeah,
the next one. So then you,
crossovers.
as an audience member, you feel like, well, now I got to see all of these because I got to know where they're going with the next. So obviously, it makes a lot of sense for a lot of different ways to try and combine all of these. And Marvel has obviously proven to all the other companies that it works for them. And without, as we've said, without doing all the legwork that Marvel has done, this is another way to possibly do successful spin-offs of single hero movies after doing a movie that everybody loves because all the heroes are in it together. And this follow-up that isn't the Justice League movie is already going to start to do some of that. So I'm excited, and I think it's a great idea. Still disappointed that we haven't yet seen a follow-up to Man of Steel, but how much more successful might Man of Steel 2 or whatever it might be called be after we really develop this shared universe and see a Justice League film and the general audience gets all excited about whatever it is, this massive alien invasion or whatever, where all the Justice League has to come together, and then we see the follow-up to the Man of Steel movie, where now more people and kids and families and everybody else has seen all these heroes come together to save the world or whatever. So just like with Avengers, they're going to want to go out and see the next Superman, the next Batman, the Wonder Woman, whatever it is.
Yep. Now, I mentioned a little bit earlier that their Cyborg was in the Justice League and will, possibly be in this upcoming Justice League movie, because we have found out that he and some other cast members are included in this upcoming Superman Batman film. First off, before we get to Cyborg, we had the announcement that Holly Hunter, KAL Mulvey, and Tao Okamoto have been cast in, well, what we don't actually know what roles yet, but they have been cast for roles in the upcoming Superman Batman film, and there's a lot of speculation just who they might be, but the official press release said all three actors will play characters newly created for the film. Whether or not that's just a smoke screen to take the scent off who they actually might be, we'll have to wait and see, but exciting to see some stars in there like Holly Hunter.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that they're not created just for the film. I find it much more exciting when they cast characters that are from the comic book world. So, and there's plenty. So you don't really need to make up others, because you can just, anybody that you cast can be a character that has appeared or appears very often or appeared once or from the millions of books that have come out in the DC universe. There's no reason to create new characters other than maybe you're not that familiar with all the characters, so you just make up your own. But
I think along the lines of what they did with Talia al Ghul in the Batman movies, she was announced as being somebody, it wasn't necessarily somebody new from the comic books, but obviously that was because they wanted to hide the plot point that she was actually Talia and not the character name that they'd given her or that she'd taken for the most of the movie. So I guess there could be something along those lines, that it needs to be a bit of a surprise during the film that who one of these or more of these might be.
Well, obviously that kind of thing makes sense going forward with any movie that's so far out, and they got to try and do their very best in any way they can to stop whatever secrets they want to keep from coming out, because it seems like more and more we know almost everything there is to know about these movies. Can you imagine that, when The Empire Strikes Back was filming, nobody had any idea that it was being filmed, and there's nothing like that can happen anymore.
No, exactly. So a couple of actors there thrown in that we heard announced. So that's exciting to see who they might be. But as I mentioned, Cyborg was also announced as being in the movie, and the actor who will play that role is Ray Fisher. And it's interesting because we'd heard Henry Cavill say in an interview that he would like to see Cyborg, and this is an interview back at Man of Steel Day, so they hadn't even talked about a sequel or had confirmed a sequel or a follow-up film at that point in time. But when he was asked what kind of characters from the DC universe he'd like to see portrayed on film in a possible sequel, he'd said Cyborg, because he liked that idea of a technology to human kind of bridge between the two, and liked the idea of Cyborg as a character, and whether or not he had any influence on that or not, we don't know. But Cyborg has been announced as being in the film. Whether we don't know, like Wonder Woman, we don't know what kind of a role or how much of a role he'll have in the film.
Well, it's interesting. I now know that Henry Cavill and I do not think alike because I've never been a Cyborg fan. I generally see him as a teenage character, a member of the Teen Titans, a smaller tiered character, and not. I wasn't particularly happy when he was cast in the new Justice League comic book when the relaunch happened. I realize they're trying to do a diversifying thing. They're trying to include, more people of different backgrounds and that sort of thing. But Cyborg's never really done anything for me. I don't find it all that original. I don't find it to be all that special. I find it to be kind of a knockoff of several other different characters, which I guess happens with lots of superheroes. So it didn't excite me necessarily to hear about this, but I feel like I remember weeks ago we heard that they were looking for an actor to play Cyborg. So I wasn't that surprised when it came out that they had cast him.
Yeah, so it's another announcement, another character, another actor in the film. We don't know, like I said, what capacity. People are saying, it's already the Justice League movie because they've got so many of these characters in there. We don't know what... how much of the film he'll be in, so it's just interesting to and exciting to have him announced. Whether you like the character or not, in the comic books, it was news to me. At the time, I didn't really know much about Cyborg. As you said, he was more of a teen kind of hero. But I've kind of warmed to the character in the Justice League comic books. He seems to be someone you can relate to in some ways, and seems to be a voice of reason in a lot of other ways. So it's going to be interesting to see that kind of character broaden his just from the general audience. Most people wouldn't even know, haven't heard of Cyborg. Wonder Woman, Batman, Superman, obviously, Flash, Green Lantern, yes, but Cyborg. Most people out there in the general movie-going audience would not have heard of Cyborg if they're not comic book fans. So it'll be interesting to see how he's kind of taken on board by the general public.
Yeah, I remember when we were watching Smallville years ago, and they did there were a couple of Cyborg episodes. Not being a fan and not being that familiar with Cyborg, it was just cool to see. They did it on Smallville all the time. New takes on characters from the comic books on television in a Superman related show. So this is kind of the same sort of thing, which is why even though I'm not a specific fan of Cyborg, I'm not upset that they've announced that another person from the comics is going to appear. I mean, get over it, people. Clearly, they're trying to do a cohesive, shared universe, and there are going to be people that are generally talked about in other stories that are going to show up in these movies. It's the same sort of thing that Marvel is doing with great success, and there's no reason why it can't work for DC. There's no proof that it will. Just because another company has done it doesn't mean it's gonna work, especially since DC isn't going about it the same exact way. But it totally makes sense that
that would try that.
And if this is successful, that it's gonna make everybody else successful going forward. So. I don't know, a Cyborg standalone film?
We had a steal.
Oh boy, did we? Can we just forget that ever happened? Or
Moving on. What do we know about this film? Well, we know that it's currently has conducted some camera tests. Diane Lane said that some camera tests were conducted and that she filmed a few shots of her feeling the Superman costume, whatever that means. And joked that she hadn't had a chance to do the same with the Batman costume. I guess from a Martha Kent point of view, she hasn't really she made that comment, "Nice suit, son," when she saw him after her house was destroyed, but she really hasn't had an opportunity to really sit down with Clark and look at his Superman costume and to talk to him about what he's doing, other than that kind of little speech at the end there as Clark Kent, where she said to him, have you decided what you thought about what you're going to do, what you want to do now? And he said he's going to get a job at the Daily Planet, etc., etc. But so this could be interesting.
Well, I like the idea that maybe how they announced that there are going to be some costume tweaks to Superman's costume for the sequel. I'm sure that lots of fans were hoping for trunks. Please let there be trunks. but they did say they were going to be minor tweaks.
Yeah.
However, I would love to see Martha Kent
Have a go at
make some of those tweaks, to the costume as it is already, but maybe add some of her own, because then that would kind of meld the two mythology points. The idea that Martha Kent made the suit, and the idea that now it's a Kryptonian suit that was made on a Krypton ship or whatever. Meld them both together so that we get a little bit of each.
Yeah, it's interesting because in the Christopher Reeve movies, he just was wearing it one from after his talks with Jor-El and his years of schooling, if you like. He just automatically was just there in the suit. We don't know really where it came from. We just knew that he had some materials in his bag with him, but how it became a costume was never really touched on. So
I'm certain that he learned to sew during that 12 years.
Right. Yeah.
He was sitting there crocheting,
Just boring having this talking voice in his ear all the time. With these psychedelic images floating across his...
Right. That was a long sequence, too, man. It felt like 12 years watching that sequence. Like, come on, get to him flying already.
That's it. So, other than that, there have been some casting calls in Troy, Michigan. Just happened this past weekend as we're recording this. They had thousands of people lining up for hours on hours to try to be selected as a extra for the upcoming Superman-Batman film there, and that seems to have been very successful. So lots of people posting photos of these lines upon lines upon lines of people just circling around the building and down the street and in the room, just getting their photos taken and their number of their extra number. So it's very exciting for those people being involved, although probably very tiresome.
What's interesting is when you watch a film like Lord of the Rings and you watch a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff, you see that they have, even back then, very advanced technology that they can create crowds with. Right. And whether, when they have like soldiers marching forward or heading into battle, they really only have like 100 extras, and then the rest of the, or even less than 100 extras, and everybody else is just mock-ups, computer-generated, and they look real. So I'm wondering why they would need thousands of people, what they would need thousands of people for. I mean, that's a big part of budget, too, I would think.
Well, I don't think they can actually cast thousands of people, just thousands of people turned up to be hopefully cast. They might only need 20, and, they'll select them from the thousands of people that showed up. I mean, they can't really help how many people show up. I mean, they can say, look, sorry, this is the end of the line, no more people. But they've said in interviews, look, we'll be up until a certain late in the night if we have to see everybody. And but we will have to draw the line somewhere where we'll have to put a stop to it. Otherwise, it'll be never ending.
And I guess the situation here is that it's extras that aren't really going to be paid, because I've done some extra work.
Yeah, I think it was like $64 for the day or something.
If that was, for me, I don't know if is that what you heard? They're getting paid the 20 or whatever they're going to hire on this Superman film?
Yeah, looking at the Oakland Press report about all these casting people, wanting to be in the casting, like who lined up for it. It says on the big yellow poster, pay is $64 something for 8 hours. $8 per hour or something like that. And the yellow sign's a little bit hard to read, but that's what it says there on the website.
That's somewhere similar to what they would pay, but I guess it's because it's in an extreme location. It's not really in New York or LA. It's not in a place where there are these casting companies that have people on file that want to do extra work and that are, quote unquote actors. Because as I said, I'd done some extra work myself, and you get a call from, it's not really an agent because I never had an agent, but it's like an agency that calls people that they have on their list. Do you want to do this for the day? And then you go and you're already there and they already have who they need. So, and as far as seeing 1,000 people, if they're really for extras, the way it generally works, directors aren't looking for a specific type of person to cast as an extra, like a background member, a person walking by in the distance or something. So I'm not sure why they wouldn't just hire 20 people as opposed to take all this time
that they need
to see thousands.
Yeah, but it says pay is $64 for anything up to 8 hours, $8 per hour, time and a half overtime, time and a half overtime paid after 8 hours. Typical filming days are 12 to 14 hours. Catered lunch included. Thank you. There you go.
Beauteous.
So that's what all these hopefuls have been lining up for, hoping to be a part of the film in some capacity whatsoever. So that's where we're at with the Superman Batman movie. There was some comments by Zack Snyder about Man of Steel that kind of created a little bit of a stir among Superman fans. You know, he was saying that he was surprised at how Superman fans, have held on to the Christopher Reeve version of the movie. He said, people asked him, what did he say here? So I'm just looking up his actual quote. He says, I was surprised about in response to Superman was how everyone clings to the Christopher Reeve version of Superman, how tightly they cling to those ideas, not really the comic book version, but more the movie version. If you really analyse the comic book version of Superman, he's killed, he's done all the things. I guess the rules that people associate with Superman in the movie world are not the rules that really apply to him in the comic book world, because those rules are different.
Yeah, I mean, I could see why that would create a stir, mostly negative, I would imagine. But I feel like, you know, and I'm going to get flack for this because it's going to sound like I'm an apologist or I just defend Zack Snyder because I like Man of Steel or whatever. But I completely agree with him. Yeah, I mean, how many different versions have there been, and why is it that that people can't seem to get away from the smiling wink at the camera, the wave at the end, the campiness, the cheesiness that was a part of the 70s films that is cool and great, and we love them, and you know, we have nostalgia for them, and Christopher Reeve's wonderful, but why can't we move on? And I think regardless of what people actually thought of the movie Man of Steel, I believe that a lot of the people, and I read a lot of the critiques by actual critics, fans on Rotten Tomatoes and things, a lot of the write-ups included things like none of the fun of the Christopher Reeve films. Like, it always had to be included in there. It always had to be talked about in their 30-year-old films that were way, 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 outdated long before anybody thought of Superman Returns, even, let alone Man of Steel. So I'm not sure. I kind of agree with Zack Snyder as to it being kind of funny that people can't seem to move away from it. It's fine to still love him, you know?
Yeah.
And maybe I'm the same, you know, maybe people feel like I'm that kind of a fan when it comes to Star Wars, because I feel like if they hadn't made the new trilogy, I would still like Star Wars. But now that they did, I feel like I'm just like, I can't watch any more Star Wars. I'm done.
No, I agree. People, obviously, the Christopher Reeve movies were the first incarnation of Superman on the big screen. For most people, that's their version of Superman. And so when you're going back to the cinema, to the theater to watch Superman on the big screen, you automatically think back to any previous version of the character on the big screen. And Brandon Routh in Superman Returns he was basically there to mimic the Christopher Reeve version of the character. So it was the same kind of thing. And that's a lot of the criticism for Superman Returns was, they're just rehashing the old Christopher Reeve films. They need to do something new. And then they did something new and people went, no, it's too far removed from the Christopher Reeve film. So, you can't
win. We've talked, said this before, you
100%.
Give them what they supposedly want and you go, because people are going to give us a hard time if we go too far away from those movies. So let's keep it kind of in the same vein. And then you do that and you get flack for it, and then you come out and you say, well, let's take a whole new take on it, and which isn't actually a whole new take. It's just a little grittier and a little more I don't know, there's a little more realism infused into how it might be if it should happen, and they changed some things on Krypton, but they really expanded it, and they did so many good things, and yet we don't have the smiling wink at the camera, so everybody's pissed off. So I understand where Zack Snyder is coming from with that.
Yeah, so that was his comments that kind of created a little bit of a stir. And Zack Snyder, David Goyer, who was the scriptwriter for Man of Steel and has written a screenplay for the upcoming Superman Batman film, also made some comments about the film and about DC, trying to create a cohesive DC movie universe. Oh, before I go to that, just quickly going back to Zack Snyder's comments, did you read in there about him? It was his idea to include Batman into this upcoming film. That it wasn't forced upon him by the powers that be.
Yeah, I'm very angry about this. I'm glad you brought it up because I didn't know if we were going to get back to Zack Snyder. I distinctly remember him, and of course this is only reading, so it's kind of like reading a text from a family member and thinking that they're angry when they're not, or thinking that they're getting sarcastic when they're not, because you can't glean emotions from a text. But my feeling, and I think a number of people's feeling, was when we read this statement from Zack Snyder, was that not only was he unhappy about kind of being forced into this, but I had feelings that he might leave the project altogether. His words were something to something like, well, they're the bosses, they're the producers, they're the ones that pay my salary. So if this is what they want to do, I got to do it. They're the ones who tell me what to do. So, and I remember reading that, and I remember feeling bad about it, because I remember feeling like there's a chance now that Zack Snyder will end up out of here. And now it seems like he's either come full circle and lied to us before, or is lying to us now, or they made him kind of and from one point of view I can understand why he would, because now he's going to direct this movie, he's going to direct Justice League, and then who knows beyond that. But I mean, it's continuous work in major blockbuster franchises going forward for the next 5 or 6 years, so it behooves him to kind of kiss their collective behinds and eat a little crow and just kind of shut up and do what they want, which is kind of what he was saying in his original statement months ago when it was first announced, but now sounds like he's off that altogether.
Yeah, I have to look back, because I don't really, I don't know if I just didn't read into those comments what you did, or I don't recall those, that kind of feeling from the original any original interview but I'll have to look back. I'm not saying that it wasn't there. I just it wasn't something that I had necessarily seen. But here he says that after Man of Steel, they're sitting around talking about what would be in the next movie, and someone kind of mentions what happens, what about Batman if he came up against Batman, because who would he face off against next? And then once that kind of idea is out there, it's like, well, how can he move away from that? Let's kind of look at that and see where that goes, because, he fought this giant alien threat Zod. So, where do you go to next? What happens next? And he says once you say it out aloud, then it's kind of hard to go back on. And so once you've said, what about Batman, then you realize it's a cool idea, and so you start trying to flesh it out, and that's where it's come from. But, it's interesting to hear that, he kind of tossed it up there originally in a meeting, or it was tossed up there, and once it's kind of come out, it was hard to go back on.
Well, once I say it out loud, it sounds ridiculous. I just don't understand. Who are these people that say, oh, well, he fought this world-destroying alien invasion menace with superpowers. Who could he possibly move on to next that would present some sort of a threat to our Man of Steel? Guy dressed as a flying rodent. Yes, perfect. That'd be great. I mean, who?
Well, I guess you got to go to the other end of the spectrum, don't you? After you've done Zod, you can't go Brainiac or someone who's of equal, menace. You've got to probably go, okay, well, let's flip it on its head and see what what if we went to a guy that has no powers?
I don't understand. And then that reminds me that, when he was at Comic-Con before Man of Steel came out, someone asked him who would win, Nolan's Batman or his Man of Steel Superman, and he just laughed at them and said, that's just a ridiculous question. I love Nolan's Batman. I love Batman. I love comic book heroes, but this is Superman we're talking about. Batman's a guy in a suit. He had the same exact response and the same exact feeling that anyone of any logical mind would have, and that is, there's no possible way. And then they go, well, what if he had kryptonite? There's no possible way. Oh, well, what if he had a big armored suit with kryptonite rings? There's no possible way that a human being can pose any threat to Superman at all. I'm sorry. So many things would have to happen. And a lot of it happened, I guess, in the Dark Knight Returns story. And he still wasn't able to defeat Superman because it just doesn't make any sense. And a lot of people say, well, that's the problem with Superman. He can't be beaten. He's too powerful. Okay, well, maybe he is, but it just doesn't make any sense. So, and Zack Snyder said that. And that's why none of these other comments that he's saying lately make sense, because they don't mesh with the attitude that he presented from the very beginning, making Man of Steel.
Well, maybe
and then after the fact.
Maybe that's why they're not settled on a title yet, because maybe this whole idea of a versus thing, while it's got the people's imaginations, the fans, who's going to win, Superman versus Batman? I mean, everything's, Dragon Ball Z, versus Batman, Godzilla versus Superman. This whole idea of versus is just an entity unto itself. So,
look, man, Dragon Ball Z I can take because.
But what I'm saying, the whole idea.
I don't know what it is, but at least they have powers.
That's what I'm saying. The whole idea of putting a character up against another character, it drives fanboys everywhere. So to keep that title at the moment, but not necessarily be where they're going to be heading in the movie itself. It may be Batman, just investigating what's going on, and so it's just having the two of them in the same movie. We don't know yet whether it's going to be a versus thing, and I agree with you. It's all of 2 seconds for Superman to destroy Batman. He doesn't even have to get close to him. He's just up in space using his heat vision and zap his pile of ash.
And we already know he's willing to snap people's necks, so...
So anyway, it is interesting that Zack Snyder has come out and said that the whole Batman thing was something that he was, had tossed up early on. And
contact me, Zack Snyder,
yes,
because you are backpedaling, my friend.
Let's put him on
changing your stance.
Put him on a lie detector machine and see which is really the truth. But that's what the comments were. And going back to what I was saying about Goyer, he's come out and having been asked from IGN about the approach to a cohesive DC movie universe. And one of his comments was, "You have to admire what Marvel's done. It's really hard to create a brand, where people follow your brand. Pixar's done it, and now Marvel has done it. It's really, really hard to do because there's not a lot of brand loyalty anymore. They've created a cohesive universe, so I really admire what they've done." And he says, he's been pretty lucky with the films he's done so far, and right now it's just more of the same, please.
That reminds me, and I love Disney and I love Pixar, and, we're talking about Man of Steel, and this is a Superman, podcast, but Disney is not responsible for Marvel, nor are they responsible for the Avengers. I see in all these articles, Disney's the Avengers, and I see in all these articles what Disney has done with the brand and how Disney has brought out these superheroes and how Disney has created a universe. No. Marvel had this going on long before Disney ever bought the company. Right. Disney said, wow, look at this super successful company we can buy and continue on the train that they have already started going down the track at high speed. And Disney, being smart, being business savvy, being, godlike in their amount of riches and power that they have, said, okay, let's just go out and buy it. And Marvel somehow said, okay, go ahead and buy it. When Lucasfilm sold to Disney, it was like, I looked at it and I went, what? Why? Why would you? I guess everybody has a price, but let's not forget that these movies were built long before Disney got involved. Same thing with I just read an article about Arrow, about how, it was about Arrow, but it was also about the upcoming Superman Batman movie. And it was, Warner Brothers has already proven with their TV show Arrow that people want to see crossovers from the comic books, because with Arrow, they finally started to introduce other characters from the comic books that have never been noticed before, Oracle's on and this and that. And I'm going, Smallville did that 10 years ago. And somehow people just don't, things get glossed over, things get forgotten about. And it annoys me, and then when Smallville came out, they had said the first show to concentrate on Clark Kent as a personality. No, the Dean Cain show, Lois and Clark, concentrated on Clark Kent as a personality. So let's not forget that the people who are, providing some of the money or marketing for these franchises these days aren't necessarily the people who put these ideas into motion. And I don't know who the guy or guys or women and men were that put this thing together when it first started. But obviously DC and Warner Brothers are clearly trying to reap some of the benefits of seeing the successes that the Marvel company did with their movies long before Disney got involved. I'm sorry. Sometimes
No, I agree. You're right. You're 100% right there. But and talking about Disney and Marvel and the powers that be and the people at the head there seems to be a little bit of give on the Marvel side of things over the release date for the Captain America, like the third Captain America film, which will go head to head on the May 6th, 2016 release date for the Superman Batman film. There seems to be a little bit of balking there on their side of things, so it will be interesting to see just how that develops as time goes on.
Is there some sort of an announcement or some sort of art?
It was just, I think, an off-the-cuff comment about from one of the heads there at Marvel or somebody there that was saying, we're still talking about it, kind of thing. So that kind of led people to believe that maybe they might be thinking about a change. So nothing concrete, just what you read into a comment here or an answer there from a question.
We're going to close down our entire production and never make another superhero. That's what I gleaned.
Yes, that's definitely what he said, what he meant in that.
Sure.
The only other thing that we really know about this upcoming Superman Batman movie is that Hans Zimmer has said that he will come back to score the film, and to some people that's a great thing. Other people weren't really that happy with what Hans Zimmer has done with superhero themes or non-themes of late. So, but it will be good to see the continuation of the Man of Steel theme in the, it would be different if you had a different composer come on board and, didn't continue on some of the themes that were in Man of Steel into this upcoming film, because I'm sure we'll still hear, some of those ideas in the follow-up film.
Well, I'm of two minds on this. My first, when you started talking about it, was hooray, more music that sounds like Batman Begins music. And my second thought was, and that was from the other side, the people that don't like the idea that he's doing more Superman music, and that is that those are just the people that, again, want to cling to the Donner films, which I can't blame them, because the John Williams soundtrack, you're never going to get over, and I think Zimmer himself has said, you're never going to get over that John Williams soundtrack. You're never going to get over the Superman theme. You're just not. But I got to go where I got to go with it in order to make it our own thing and in order to have its own flavor. That theme is in everybody's head. Everybody knows it. People sing it. I got a 7-year-old who knows it when it comes on. So, and then she's never even seen those movies. But it's, other than, as a baby when it's on here and there. But it's, those are iconic themes that they're really not doing in movies anymore. If you look at the movies that have themes, it's like a sequel to Indiana Jones or, Superman Returns, which was the last one of that, or Star Wars. They do the same thing every time. Yeah. But, I saw that Captain America movie, and there's really no discernible theme.
Yeah.
There are kind of, there are things they return to. There are feelings. There are flavors. You hear some of the same sounds, and there's that one sound that turns up throughout the Man of Steel soundtrack several times, but it's not a theme. No. This is a 7-minute opus to Superman when John Williams does it. And, Captain America doesn't have one either. Spider-Man didn't have one. There was a little thing, again, but not a theme. And they just don't do that anymore. So my two minds are, and I kind of, tongue-in-cheek said more Batman-sounding music, because we are going to have Batman in this film, so it's going to be interesting to see how he goes about, and he himself said it, how am I going to, with respect to what we already did, and, it was Christian Bale's character and it was Nolan's take on it, how am I going to make new themes that reflect what we're doing, and something new that I haven't, explained with Batman through music. How am I going to do that now? And, of course, we have the Superman part, which he's already worked on, and I guess we'll expand upon.
All right, well, looking elsewhere in the movie universe, I was very pleased to see that Man of Steel was, was pretty much the best-selling superhero Blu-ray of 2013. It outsold The Wolverine and Iron Man 3 on Blu-ray, and it only came out in November of 2013, so that's pretty good. That's impressive. The numbers.com is where these figures come out from. 2,722,231 Blu-rays of Man of Steel was sold in the USA in 2013, making the film the third best-selling Blu-ray release of overall, behind Despicable Me 2 and The Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey.
Oh, well. The Hobbit was a very boring film. I wanted to enjoy it a lot more than I did, but it was really the only the last 35 minutes or so that finally got my attention. But yeah, it's good to know. I mean, when I read that, I was actually looking for the article just now as you were talking about it, because I couldn't remember seeing what other superheroes. I couldn't remember any superhero movies that had even come out against it around the same time. But that's excellent news, being that it was the end of the year already.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they're saying from November to the end of December, it outsold movies that had been out for months previous to that. But Wolverine, not that surprising, but Iron Man 3 being the biggest movie of all time, I mean, I know it's not the biggest movie of all time, but huge at the box office. The fact that Man of Steel was able to outsell that's great.
Yeah, as far as DVD sales are concerned, obviously there's Blu-ray and there's DVD. It made the top 20 in DVD sales for 2013, where Iron Man 3 was ranked 39th. So it even outdid that as far as in DVD sales. But I guess trend now these days for people with high-end home theater systems is Blu-ray. So it was interesting to see that it did so well in Blu-ray sales.
I'm happy about it.
Very good. Well, the only other thing with Man of Steel, before we move into some other stuff we want to talk about, was that Henry Cavill won the Best Hero Award at the MTV Awards for his role as Superman in Man of Steel, which created a little bit of controversy amongst some fans who obviously weren't fans of Man of Steel, saying, "Hero? What kind of a hero? He wasn't a hero in the movie."
That's funny. He and Lois in the army didn't save the world or anything.
No, that's right.
And everybody that exists on Earth wasn't saved. But let's forget about that and just kind of point out that we didn't actually see him specifically saving enough people individually in the film. Who was he up against? Do you have a list there?
I do. His competitors for the award were Channing Tatum as John KAL in White House Down, Chris Hemsworth as Thor in Thor: The Dark World, Martin Freeman as Bilbo Baggins in the Hobbit movie, and Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man in Iron Man 3.
Wow, that's a big one.
Yeah.
That's the one that surprises me. I mean, Thor, I think Chris Hemsworth is great.
Yeah.
And I love that Thor movie. But Robert Downey Jr., that's a huge surprise to me.
Very impressive.
He's super charming. Everybody loves him. He's funny. He gets up there. He gives awesome speeches and stuff. So to see Henry Cavill win there, that's and it also kind of points out that we're going to talk about this a little later, but that maybe the idea that we think Superman isn't that appealing to young people really isn't as bad as we think. I mean, I feel it in my own life when I look around. I see kids with Spider-Man and Batman and Thor and Iron Man and Avenger shirts and all that, but I don't see a lot of Superman going on. I went to my daughter's Halloween parade during Halloween time, and I saw 2 Zods and I saw 2 Supermans, but I saw 90 Iron Men and 30 Batmen, and so I'm kind of like, well, I guess kids don't really care about Superman, and I can't really say that Man of Steel is a great movie for kids. No. It's not it's not like Avengers or Captain America, where it's like, golly gee, let's go, and it's really exciting. But when you see, MTV is a young people's movie awards. When you look at the audience there, they're all teenagers and 20-somethings. They're not 40-year-olds. So that they picked Henry Cavill must mean that at the very least they enjoyed him as Superman and Man of Steel. So
yeah, no, so it bodes well. But there was a lot of Henry Cavill fans, especially a lot of the female fans out there, who were disappointed that he wasn't even nominated for the shirtless scene award.
I know I was disappointed. Well, I talked to people. My brother was saying to me, when you see Chris Evans or Chris Hemsworth take their shirts off in their Marvel movies, it's not even close to
How big?
that Henry Cavill could even compare to them at all in terms of how ripped they are, how in shape they are. I mean, I haven't done a side by side comparison. I know that I was impressed by a lot of the running pictures that were coming out before Man of Steel, and I was saying he's getting into really good shape, which is better than I remember any Superman movie, Superman actor doing. But I haven't done a side-by-side comparison. I know that Hemsworth is huge and massive, but I'm not sure if
I think
they
Henry
really
would give him a good run for his money.
You think so?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
But let's move on to this little fan film that was put together. I thought it was very well done, showing what was considered an alternate possible ending to the film Gravity with Sandra Bullock using footage from Superman 4 with Christopher Reeve. I thought it was so well done. Gee, I loved it.
Yeah, it was cute. It was cute. I laughed at it. I like the after the credits thing.
Yes, that tops it off.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
I thought it was well pieced together. It was well kind of, it was, using such such different films as far as years, and the technology that, between them. And it kind of, blended them well together. And I especially liked where Superman's talking in space and in a little kind of note at the bottom, well, you can't hear what he's saying because sound doesn't travel in space. So I thought that was funny because in Superman 4, obviously he's speaking and the astronauts can hear him.
Right. We talked about that kind of stuff when Zod and crew arrive on the moon. They're all just talking, and everyone can hear them. That's what they do in those movies. But it always astonishes me what people can do, and you probably know more about it than I do because you have a Mac, and Macs are good for making movies, and they have different kind of programs on there for that kind of thing. But like, I'm impressed when we backdrop a courthouse behind me playing Lex Luthor in a horrible, the press conference, boring, long ass thing, and then I see these people do this where they seamlessly integrate two separate movies, and there's a couple spots where I can see they move the screen or whatever. Yeah, but it's amazing to me that can be done with computer programs.
Yeah, it's home
by people at
software.
home.
It's right. Yeah, so really well done, very ingenious to think of it and to put it together. That was very smart, and using the music the way they did, and it was just well pieced together. So hats go off to the person who put that together. So all right, well, let's move away from movie talk. There's nothing in the world of TV to discuss, so let's jump straight into comic book discussions, where sadly DC Comics have cancelled the Adventures of Superman digital first standalone series.
Yeah, this is a disappointment. I enjoy it every time I read it. I think it's a awesome, easy way to read comics. They're short. They fit right to the screen. You try to read some of the regular books and you got to zoom in and move side to side in order to see everything. And the splash pages never work right. But, when they're specifically digitally released and they know that that's the format, the pages fit exactly and you see everything and they look great and they're crisp. And these stories were great, and people love the idea that they can just see traditional Superman stories without having to worry about continuity. And I imagine that just like any business, it's about money and it's about what it's making and it's about what it's selling, and it must not have done that well. Otherwise, you wouldn't cancel it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what their intention was, how long they plan to go on for. It went for 51 digital chapters, which will be collected in print. Obviously, they're still doing print editions, and the first trade paperback collection has just come out as well. So obviously there was going to be a limited run. It was never going to be an ongoing thing that was just endless. And it was,
I didn't know that.
Well, I mean,
do we know that?
No, we don't know that, but I'm assuming that it was never... I mean, it's not like Superman or Action Comics that that it's always going to be around forever, or you assume so. They didn't say it's going to only be 51 issues, but, it had a lot of controversy when it first started out with that Orson Scott Card story that never got published, and they'd said at the time, we just need to find an artist who will want to be a part of it and will continue on it, but it never happened. So there were stories, I guess, that were still up their sleeve if they wanted them. Maybe it just wasn't doing the sales. I know a lot of fans liked it, because they were able to, as you said, read a continuity-free classic Superman story. You could pick up whatever you liked. You didn't have to know anything about it previously, or you didn't have to, once it was finished, it was self-contained. So that was all well and good, and that's for that purpose I'm disappointed that it's gone, because there were a lot of fans who are not reading the New 52 stuff and who only wanted to read a standalone kind of thing that they can pick up whenever they want and be able to read it and enjoy it for what it was without having to then go out and buy 7 more issues to continue on reading that story. So for those people, I'm bitterly disappointed.
Yeah, me too.
It is sad. So, but Infinite Crisis, the tie-in to the upcoming video game, will be taking the day slot of Adventures of Superman as a digital first series, and that will be tying into the upcoming video game, which I guess makes sense. They did that with Injustice: Gods Among Us. That's continuing on still as a comic book, a digital first comic book. So I guess that digital first things kind of tie in with people who are video game kind of people. I guess that's where the synergy is for them at DC Comics releasing those types of comic books.
Yay for me! Some of my free time will be freed up.
So there it is, DC Comics cancelling Adventures of Superman, which is a little bit sad. The two people who reviewed the book for us at the Superman homepage, Sean Morrissey and Alyssa Gossage, will be doing a finale article on giving their points of view on the series now that it's concluded. That'll be coming up in the next week or so at the Superman.
And thanks
homepage.
to you, DC, now their children are going to starve because they won't be able to do reviews for the Superman.
They get paid so highly to do so too.
Gosh, yes.
All right, let's move into some of the comic books that we have read this past month. Since our last podcast, we've had 2 issues of Superman released, Superman number 29 and Superman number 30. I know you've read Superman number 29. Did you want to start in on that one?
Sure. This was a story where Superman, who had previously met up with Starfire because she appeared in order to, I guess, well, we were going to find out in this story, and we find out that she's pissed at him because he's not doing enough to cleanse the earth of things that are a danger to it. And she goes on to say that it's not worth saving something that's already dead, and he doesn't understand. And, of course, we see that, I guess, from her book or from her storyline, there are these aliens that can integrate with human beings. I don't know how familiar you are with them.
No, not at all.
So it's a kind of a crossover where apparently you need to kind of understand who she is and where she's from and who these creatures are to get the whole thing. But the story is about them finding these lost weapons that are, I guess, living in some way, and when a human being touches them, they get infected and they become these aliens. And supposedly they've been giving themselves over to this alien menace voluntarily, and Superman doesn't stand for that, and hilarity ensues.
Yeah, I wasn't really impressed with this one too much. I don't know too much about Starfire. It kind of irks me when characters from the wider DC universe come in and I don't really know much about them, because then I kind of feel a little bit lost. So yeah, that was Superman number 29, and then Superman number 30, which we just reviewed this past week. Adam DeChannel reviewed it for the website. Is a little bit better. We see it's a little bit disjointed early on. Adam really didn't like it for this point. The fact that we jump around a little bit. We use pages for unnecessarily on this honeymoon couple who are frolicking in the sea in the Bahamas, and then we use up 4 pages to learn about them, only to then have them die because then something boils the water there on the shoreline, and we assume it's Doomsday, and then they're gone, and we kind of the Bahamas only kind of comes back at the very last page because Superman finds out that something's happened there, but. He flies to Smallville, where Star Labs have taken up residence because there's all the people of Smallville are comatose. They're out for the count, and nobody knows why. They seem to be perfectly healthy, and Superman finds that there are these crop circles in the grains in the fields that spell out the word doom in Kryptonian, and obviously thinks about it being Doomsday, comes across the Eradicator, who is the Eradicators are supposedly these beings that turn up when a planet is about to die of natural causes, and help that process along. But the Eradicator from Krypton is somehow on Earth now and says that the Eradicator of Earth isn't in existence because Earth is going to die, but not by natural causes. It's going to be murdered, and that Superman will be the one to murder it. And it's all a bit kind of disjointed, this story, but it's a prelude to the upcoming Superman Doomed saga. So in that way, I guess it's giving a lot of loose ends, a lot of threads to take up for that story. But Scott Lobdell, once again, kind of just a little bit all over the place.
Well, they've been saying that in many different books, I guess. Different characters have been meeting up with Superman and telling him that everything he does is what's going to cause all the hell to be, unleashed on Earth, and he's really the catalyst for everything that's going to doom the planet. And I don't know if it's all just because they're tying it into this doomsday thing and then it's going to be over after that, or if this whole dark, depressing, you're a problem, Superman, and you need to go away thing is going to continue after that. It seems like that seems to be the way they're going at the moment, the last few months. You're a menace and you need to be out of here kind of thing.
Yeah. So that was Superman number 30, moving into the Doomsday, or the Doomed story, tying in with Doomsday. So we wait for to see how that picks up moving forward. In Action Comics number 30, we see the Tower Control succeeding in releasing Doomsday from the Phantom Zone, and after killing a polar bear, the creature's attention turns to the civilians who are there on the iceberg, part of the tower people, their support staff, whatever you have on the ground there. And meanwhile, Superman attacks Tower Control. He freezes their ghost soldiers, like he did with Sawyer, and and it's just a bit, it's all about, I guess, another prelude to this, Doomed saga that we've got upcoming. Michael Bailey, who reviewed it for the website, liked it. We have this Harrow character, who's obviously the head of Tower, this female, and she's, says that the next time that she and Superman come face to face, that they will kill him, if or he can join her if he's willing to.
That's just another situation where this character is telling him he's going to be the cause of the death, and because he's not willing to do what needs to be done, Earth's going to die, people are going to die. When they come face to face, he figures out how to beat her. He has her, in front of him, and he can finish her off. And she says, "Oh, unbelievable! You yet again, you failed to do what needs to be done. Since you didn't kill me now, you can be sure we'll kill you next time." And then they go away or whatever. And all of this seems to be based on the reasoning that he's going to be the destruction of the Earth, and so they need to. She points out to him that, you were with Wonder Woman and you detonated a nuclear weapon. You were under the ground and you let out these creatures that turned into monsters that couldn't be controlled. And sure, it ended okay, but how could you know that was going to happen? You're the reason that these two other Kryptonians even came here in the first place. Doom, doom, doom. You're going to be the end of the world, and the reason you're going to be the end of the world is because you don't do what needs to be done.
Yeah, an interesting kind of attack on him in a less physical way, but more in a mental way. Saying that he doesn't have what it takes, that he keeps making the wrong decisions, and all these kinds of things, trying to put doubt in his mind. But it's the second time now, having just mentioned Superman number 30, where someone tells him that he's going to be the end of the world. Yeah,
it's an ongoing. Yeah, it's a thread.
A thread. So okay, let's move on to Superman Wonder Woman number 7. Which again is going to be tying into the upcoming Superman Doomed story. And in this one, we have the aftermath of the nuclear explosion that the two of them created to stop Zod from opening up the Phantom Zone. And it's all about Superman protected Wonder Woman from the explosion using his cape, and now she's trying to save him by taking him to someone who can fix him. And weird. The way that the nuclear explosion, the kind of the thing, the effect that it had on his body, destroyed his nose completely.
That's funny. The way you ended that statement, it destroyed his nose completely. Yeah, he kind of looked like a zombie or a corpse or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually I thought I thought it looked cool, and I read the review on the site. If you want to point out who reviewed it,
Yes,
I'm on.
T.A. Hewitt.
Oh, there you go. Good review, and he pointed out a number of things that I didn't really think of, and maybe I'm the people that he mentions, saying, well, it's all well and good if you're just a casual reader who has no idea or just doesn't care and wants to see a cool story about two people who are in a nuclear explosion and a corpse walking around. But if you have any idea of the cohesiveness of the universe and the things that have been going on, I didn't even notice, he mentions, when they're over London, that it's destroyed underneath and it's being rebuilt. I didn't notice that. I did not. I was wondering why they were there, what that had to do with Wonder Woman, because I don't read Wonder Woman.
Yeah, it's totally separate to Superman's story. It's something that's happened in the Wonder Woman comics.
And then he mentioned that in Forever Evil or something, the world, the London gets destroyed, people die, lots of things happen. So it's very callous for the two greatest heroes on Earth to be out dancing and worrying about their romance in London when so many things have happened and so many terrible things have occurred, and they should be helping to clean up, and they've set off a nuclear weapon on an island, and that won't be explored again. And of course, he's speculating that it won't come up. But my thinking of it when I saw it was just that they were in a deserted area. There wasn't any life around, and they did what they had to do to stop the world from being destroyed again. So even if there were some peripheral damages, sometimes you have to make the decision to say, well, I either break Zod's neck here, or he eventually breaks mine, and then he goes and destroys the entire planet, and everyone dies. Same kind of thing here, but I didn't get the impression that they detonated a nuclear explosion somewhere where other people were going to be affected by it. It seemed like they were.
That was a deserted island of your past nuclear test site or whatever it would be, in a bunker somewhere. So, yeah, there were possibly life, as far as there's animal life. Sure, there's the effect it'll have on just putting nuclear what do you call it, fallout into the atmosphere is going to have some kind of an effect on that's not really touched on at all. So I can understand the negative.
That area that's already dead and not being used for anything.
Yeah, I guess it goes into the Earth's atmosphere as well, and probably could, depending on which way the storms and wind and everything, the weather is going, could end up impacting on someone somewhere.
Possibly. And I don't know if it was Forever Evil or not, but apparently I didn't even know. I only just started reading, I think it was Forever Evil, the one where Lex Luthor's in a helicopter and it crashes, and then he finds out that there's this new evil force from another universe that has come. Is that Forever Evil?
Yes, that's okay. The Ultraman and his...
Yeah. I only read the first one, and I think that's the one he's referring to in the review when he says that a lot of the damage on Earth was caused by that whole thing, and we still haven't gotten over the aftermath of that, and here they are going to dance and wearing cute T-shirts or whatever. So yeah, I'm even though I'm trying to kind of get a whole idea of what's going on around, I had no idea that was even connected to main continuity, or that things that were happening in separate kind of standalone books had an impact on what I was supposed to be reading in current continuity. So I maybe you find out as it goes on, but I was not aware that was connected to any actual reality that is going on with these characters right now.
Yeah, I guess that's the fault of the editors too. They need to have some more reference points in the little boxes and things to say, London catastrophe, happened in such and such a story, so that people who aren't buying, for them, they're reading everything that DC Comics brings out or whatever, so they know they're across the board what's going on. But fans who are just buying, say, Superman, Wonder Woman, that title alone, and not necessarily the individual characters' books, will have no idea why London is important. I had no idea.
I didn't even notice it was damaged. Did you see that there was damage there?
I didn't necessarily look because, like I said, it wasn't necessarily something that was important or known to me, so I just assumed that this was this is afterwards, this is down the track, they're flying, they're happy, they're reunited. That's all I knew. So interesting.
And another thing that confuses me about continuity and about things that are going on is this whole Superboy thing. We're not going to speak about specific comics, I don't think, but I don't remember this character. I don't know who he is. I don't know why I'm supposed to care about him. Is he in Forever Evil 2? Is this where I'm supposed to get my information on this character? Why is he trying to kill the Titans? Why is he evil? Why is he Superman's son and he's a jerk off? I don't understand what's going on. I don't understand the point of having an entire title devoted to an evil character called Superboy. I don't.
Yeah, well, he's the future son of Superman and Lois Lane. His name is John Lane Kent. He's a Kryptonian human hybrid whose physiology is unstable, and he's going to die.
He said that, but I don't remember reading that anywhere. I read from the 25 was the one where Connor died, and then or Con-El or whatever, and then 26 was the first one he was in where he's trying to kill Wonder Girl, and there was no crossover. It just was there.
Yeah, well, his first appearance in this continuity is Superboy number 19 from April 2013, so you might have to go back to that one to refresh the memory of how and when he first appeared. But now he's taken over the Superboy title. He's taken over Con-El's life, if you like. Nobody really knows, other than I think what's her name? One of the Teen Titans.
Raven, I think.
Raven, yeah, who's able to read minds and things. Nobody really knows that it's no longer Con-El, that it's that he's taken over the mantle of Superboy, but he's got obviously he's got his own motives, and he wants to kill off all superheroes and metahumans because obviously in his future they were the reason for things going haywire and for the future being the way it was. And so he's come back in time to stop that from happening. And so I guess it's not a character that I've necessarily warmed to. I mean, I don't think it's supposed to be warming to him, but it's not something that has won me over yet. This story, I'm waiting to see how it pans out before I really can make a judgment on it.
Yeah, I started to get that idea when I was reading it because I was completely confused. I mean, I knew that we were moving over into an evil Superboy after Con-El was either killed or disappeared or whatever it was that happened to him at the end of the Return to Krypton thing. But I did start to get the idea that even though he seems like a really bad guy, his motives might kind of be altruistic and he's being controlled by someone who may have lied to him anyway. But it seems like he believes that he has to do this in order to stop what happened in the future from happening. But it's not like he's a great guy about it. He seems to enjoy doing it at the same time. He seems to like watching them suffer and that kind of thing. And I'm just not sure about a whole book devoted to a super family member that
is a villain.
And just a really sadistic kind of villain.
Yeah. Any other comics you want to touch on before we move into other areas?
Well, the whole Supergirl thing is weird too. It seems like, and maybe they're not. Again, maybe they're not selling. Maybe they're trying to spice them up. Maybe the whole thing of people saying Superman's just too good. Who cares about him? Batman's cool because he's an anti-hero, and Wolverine's cool because he'll cut people. The super people are just too nice, and they're all the same. So they're trying to make them all a little different. And here we have another situation where Supergirl is very interested in killing people now because she has a red ring and she's in the Red Lantern's book. And I tried to read some of the Red Lantern's books because, again, they were tied in and the story seemed to continue into those books. And you had to kind of read Supergirl, whatever number it was, and then it said in there, now read Red Lantern's number 28 in order to find out where she goes from here. So I read that, but she really only appears in like 5 pages of that. So I skipped over a lot of the Green Lantern stuff and just went right to her stuff. And I tried to follow her story in Red Lantern, and I read the next one, and she was barely in that, and now Guy Gardner wants to get rid of her, so the whole thing where she finally belongs and maybe she'll feel comfortable now is in turmoil again, and of course she still has this rage, and of course the Red Lantern rings are meant to be fueled by rage, so I'm not really sure what the problem is in terms of why we can't have her on the team if she's the most rageful person we've ever seen, and she's super strong with the ring and can really use her rage to do whatever it is we do. And my impression of the Red Lanterns was only from the animated show that was on, and I only watched one episode. It seemed like they were villains. It seemed like they were going and killing planets and killing people. And this story, it seems like they're good guys, but they go about it in a different way, and they use anger and stuff, which can be good, I guess, at times, but it's very convoluted, and there's lots of crazy things going on, and the idea that she's got this ring, and now we got to follow her into 2 other different books and try to read hers at the same time, I don't like it.
Yeah, I'm not a Green Lantern reader. I'm not a Red Lanterns reader, so... but it kind of fits, I guess. You had to look into a little bit on the Red Lanterns to find out a little bit about what there is, what is their shtick. So it kind of fits with what Supergirl's been of late. She's all about rage. She's all about punching first, asking questions later. So it kind of fits. But I think she's a bit scary to the other Red Lanterns, or especially to is it Hal Jordan, who's the Red Lantern?
Guy Gardner.
Guy Gardner. Who is like, yeah, okay, just kind of tone it back a little bit, girl. I think you're a little bit over the top. So, and that seems to fit in with his other pals who like her rage and kind of seeing her as the ultimate weapon for their cause. But Gardner's not too sure. Just she's a bit of a loose cannon. So. Look, it's not going to be a long thing. I've seen already ahead for the solicitations for a couple of months down the track, and it appears that she'll be taking off the red ring and going back to her normal uniform. So I guess it's just a passage in her growth that she needs to go through.
Yeah, I mean, I always, I said that about the Superman Blue when he had electric powers, that everyone says, "Oh, what a dark period!" And Superman, how could they ever do something like that? I just looked at it as another adventure, a part of their lives, and I'm okay with them doing it. I'm not loving the crossover and the convoluted story, but I don't mind the idea that since she's so rageful, the red ring sought her out.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things that if you're not a fan of the stories, it's not something that you necessarily like to see. But especially for a Supergirl character, it just doesn't seem that she's had really a great story since her inception. So waiting to see where this comes out at the end of the Red Lantern story, to see what kind of growth that brings for her character, and whether she can move forward into something that's a little bit more peaceful. I guess she's a bit crazy at the moment. And
we had another situation in the Supergirl story where they went to Superman for help, and he kind of just said, "Well, screw you guys, I'm going home."
Well, at least they went to him. They showed something. Obviously, they had to do that token kind of gesture. Obviously, it can't be a part of the story moving forward because he's got his own things going on. But I guess they just had to do a token, appearance by the character.
It would almost be better, though, if they didn't go to him, because it's another situation where they make Superman seem like he
doesn't care.
He's like, not my problem.
Yeah.
He doesn't say that exactly, but he tries. And
and realizes it's just not. She doesn't want his help anymore.
She rebuffs him again, and then
Well, if they didn't have that there, then they'd have Scotty V ranting on his next Great Scott segment about how Superman never appeared in a Supergirl comic when she needed him.
I have influenced the motion of DC Comics. You see?
All right, let's move outside of our comic book discussions. And this past month, we've actually had an anniversary that really hasn't been touched on much at all, because it's overshadowed by Batman's 75th anniversary this year. And I guess Superman 76 is not necessarily an anniversary that many people celebrate, but as Superman fans, we want to make mention that Superman is now 76 years old, in celebrating his 76th anniversary. On April 18th is the date that many people consider to be the release date of Action Comics #1 back in 1938.
Good times. I'm
glad
that happened. I wasn't, but I'm guessing that I'm glad it happened. I know that.
For sure.
And, man, that Cavill looks damn good for 76. What's he eating?
I don't know, but Superman's 76th anniversary having taken place this past month. So he's just moving on and upwards, ever forward to that big 100th that we both hope we're around to see.
We better be around. Somebody's got some answering to do if I'm not around for that.
Very good. All right. Speaking about things we won't be around for, I won't be at this year's celebration for the Superman celebration in Metropolis, Illinois. Was there last year, but can't go every year. It's a big trip from Australia, and but some big celebrities being announced for the 2014 Superman celebration. And on top of the list for that was Dean Cain, who will make I think it's his first time there at the Metropolis, Illinois Superman celebration, and he will be joined by none other than Lando Calrissian.
Ooh, Lando.
What?
Exactly. We got to start celebrating Star Wars now. Superman's appeal just isn't grand enough. It's going to be the Super Star Wars celebration from now on.
Look, and in their defense, they have had other actors in other things. He was in a Batman movie. I think it was the original Batman movie with Michael Keaton.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, and we've had actresses who've played Catwoman,
which is funny,
because
he was Harvey Dent in that movie, and then 2 movies later they cast Tommy Lee Jones.
Right.
As the same character. So not only, and they recast people often, but you got a black guy and then you got a white guy. It's, pretty glaringly obvious that he can't be the same person, but they did it anyway.
Yeah, as I was saying, we've had actors and actresses in the past from outside the Superman universe. We've had, I think it was when I was there in 2003, just looking it up, I think one of the women who played Catwoman in one, I can't see it at the moment, but one of the, I think it was the 1960s Batman TV show. They had one of the women who played Catwoman in that TV series was there. So we've had actors and we've had wrestlers. We've had different people from different walks of life who have appeared at the Superman celebration. But Lando Calrissian, not obviously that's what he's most famous for. But we've also got Valerie Perrine, who played Miss Tessmacher. She'll be there.
Tessmacher!
We've got Aaron Smolinski, who played the baby KAL in Superman the movie, coming out of the rocket ship naked. He's also in Superman 3. I think it was the boy at the photo booth there. And he was in Man of Steel as one of the soldiers there at the desert area where they first came into contact with Faora. He was supposed to have a line in the film, but it was cut out, and he's there in the background behind General Hardy and Superman and Lois Lane there as they first meet Faora in Man of Steel. He will be there at the Superman celebration this year, as will Elliot S. Maggin, one of the legendary comic book writers and novelists for Superman over the years. He will also be there at this year's celebration.
Excellent. Lots of guests. Now, someone wrote to me and said that the reason Lando is going to be at the celebration is that he's going to be in the new movie. I don't know. I didn't read anything like that, and I don't remember seeing anything reported on the site. So if that's something that they know somehow, I don't know. But that would make a little more sense to me. But you're right. They have had other guests from other comic book worlds and other worlds altogether. So anything is possible, but that could be a reason if he was in fact going to be.
I think I may have heard that he might be in the upcoming Star Wars films, because we know we're getting some of the old actors back from the original films for that. Maybe that's where they heard something, but no, I haven't heard of him being in the follow-up to Man of Steel. But anyway, for those interested, the June celebration, the Superman celebration in Metropolis, Illinois, takes place June 12th to June 15th. We are planning on having a Superman homepage meet and greet there on the Friday of that 4-day festival. So stay tuned for details on that. But if you want more details about the Superman celebration, head to supermancelebration.net. Now, the only other thing that we want to touch on, and you kind of a little bit talked about this earlier, about a study was conducted here in Australia that kind of shows that Superman's appeal amongst Gen Y is weak. Not up there with some of the other heroes like Iron Man, Batman, who obviously have been more in the movie world of late, and that's where they kind of get. They get seen by the younger generation these days who don't necessarily or aren't necessarily into comic books. What did you make of this study? I know it was conducted in Australia, and so it might not reflect 100% what is happening in the USA there, where Superman is obviously as American as American Pie. But we've got Hugh Jackman was a favourite in this amongst 18 to 34-year-olds. But again, he's an Australian actor, so that might have had an influence on this particular study.
Well, did it say Hugh Jackman or did it just say Wolverine?
Well, it said Wolverine, but where would most people of a younger generation know Wolverine from if they're not really comic book readers? And let's be honest, most comic book readers these days, I think, are probably from 20s up to 40s. I wouldn't say, and obviously older as well, but I wouldn't say that the majority of comic book readers are necessarily kids or teenagers anymore.
No, I would agree with that. But I also think there have been a lot more animated series. There's still an animated Avengers presence. Spider-Man is ever present on television in animated form. Iron Man's there. I think it's called Iron Man and the Avengers or something like that. And Batman continues to have a presence in animation. So Wolverine, I don't know if there's an X-Men cartoon at this time, but something about the Marvel heroes seems to make them more appealing and more sellable to children, it seems like to me.
Well, there's that whole angst thing, with the X-Men and all that kind of thing, teens and, feeling ostracized and, not part of society and all that kind of thing that may be more, relatable for teens who, go through that kind of process themselves. So I can understand that. And for the people who are 35 to 54, Superman was obviously a big influence on their childhood, with the movies, with the comic books, with TV shows, with, all manner of different ways that they would have been, I mean, you and I are in that age group. I think you're over 35.
I am indeed.
There you go. So that is definitely, makes sense that Superman would be, strongest amongst that age group. I think DC Comics and Warner Brothers need to do more in the form of TV and video games on the Superman front for the younger audience, because that seems to be where they get their influences from.
Yeah, and it seems like every time something does seem to come out that children might be able to get interested in, it goes away very quickly.
Doesn't last.
The Superboy on the Young Justice show could have been something. You could have expanded on that. You could have an animated show with Superman. You could have spun off Superman from his Brave and the Bold appearance, or his appearance on the Batman or whatever. Mm-hmm. And obviously a new show, his own show. But I don't know. It oftentimes doesn't seem like they're all that interested in really increasing Superman's popularity among young people.
Which is a shame. So that's where things are at with that study, what it showed. So I
did see he did pretty well overall, though. Yeah,
no, overall he's still up there. Most people would consider, you ask about a superhero, Superman, Batman, it would obviously be the top two that people would mention. So definitely still up there. With his appeal, just it was kind of weaker in the current young generation.
Hey, I figured out that's where Batman would win in a versus battle, because he's once again contest. He's the winner. There you go.
Yeah. All right, let's move into the big question segment of our show.
Let's start with the big question.
Last month's question was Superman and Wonder Woman or Superman and Lois? Give us your thoughts. And one of our first thoughts was from Brandon Whitmore, who said, I say Lois, but only because I grew up conditioned to accept them together, and it just seems to be the right way. However, if I had never heard of Superman until very recently, I would most likely see myself on the side of Superman with Wonder Woman, since it seems very logical. The Kingdom Come story from 1996 also convinced me that the two have a common bond that he could just never really have with Lois.
Well, thank you, Brandon. Good to hear from you. Some well thought out, well structured thoughts there on who he would prefer to see Superman with. We had Haley. She writes in and says, Superman, Clark Kent, and Lois Lane. Classic story that hasn't been touched by the New 52. Would love to see what DC entertainment has in store for this legendary triangle for 2, as well as the dual identity. Maybe Superman can get his sales numbers up. Well,
Oh, they've touched on it, Haley. They had Superman risk Lois's life in order to protect his dual identity. You didn't read
I
that?
knew you'd go back to that.
Romina wrote, Lois Lane, she's the one. Very concise, simple thought.
Succinct.
That's it.
Very cool. Thank you,
Lois.
Romina. Good to hear from you. We've got quite a few responses to this one. So moving forward, we had Donovan Hunter, who wrote in and said, Superman and Lois. Lois and Clark is still the best Superman TV show ever. Their relationship is amazing. I can't wait to see that relationship progress in the second Man of Steel movie.
I agree with you, Donovan.
Yeah,
A.G. Mason. Yeah, A.J. Mason wrote, First, I should apologize for having listened to the show since it began and never having answered a big question. Shameful. So I finally decided to rectify that. Here goes. Lois, ultimately. However, it doesn't bother me for the comics to explore this Clark-Diana idea to a point. In past versions, Clark explored relationships with others, Lana, etc., all the way to finally being with Lois. I tend to look at it the same way. It's an interesting angle to explore, but likely temporary.
Yeah, and that's what I think. It's nice for them to be able to explore the idea, and as he says, to a point. He doesn't think it will be permanent. But ultimately, Superman and Lois Lane should be together, and I think that's where they'll probably end up. But we move on with David Landon saying, before the New 52 reboot, we spent many years exploring the Clark and Lois romance. It even had its own TV show at one point, so why not take this opportunity to do something different? I think it's funny how fans often complain if the same old stories are told over and over again, but when the writers try to do something different, they complain about that. The Superman-Wonder Woman relationship is an interesting one, and I'd like to see it stick around a little while.
I agree. I think
it's good to explore different ideas.
I believe Lois and Clark are the way, the one true light to go. But it's neat to see, a different relationship in the early stages of their lives, and they got plenty of time, long after we're all gone, to explore any relationship they want. So now that they've rebooted, they can do that because Superman's never going to cheat on Lois. So it's got to be,
fresh start.
At a time when it's a fresh start. So Patrick O'Neill wrote, neither. My vote goes for Superman and Lana.
Wow.
Lana was Clark's first girlfriend long before Superman ever existed. Clark was not flying around impressing everybody as Superman when Lana was his girlfriend. He was just Clark. Lois fell in love with Superman first and later learned to love Clark, while Lana loved Clark for who he was, not what he could do, being Superman.
Interesting. I think Lois, depending on the story, has fallen in love with Clark, and obviously while she was smitten with Superman, it was Clark that she fell in love with. I know that was the way in the TV show. She was smitten with Superman, and was all gaga over Superman, but came to love Clark before she realised he was Superman, or at the same time, or depending on how you read it. But interesting thoughts. Thank you, Patrick. Moving on.
You.
Stephen Marshall wrote in and he says, love this podcast, get excited every time one pops up. Well, thank you, Stephen. In answer to the question, Superman and Lois is always what I think, but we know as Kryptonians, Superman always lives far beyond Lois Lane's lifespan, so I think Wonder Woman who he should get with sometime after Lois has passed on, just like Kingdom Come did. Keep up the good work, guys. Well, thank you, Stephen Marshall. Good thoughts there.
Yeah, that's a good point. If he's going to live much longer than anybody he would get involved with who's a human, it might be easier for him to be involved with someone who's not going to go away permanently. We also had Martin Gray send us an answer, but he sent it as an audio file. So let's listen in on what Martin had to say.
So, who should Superman be with? Wonder Woman or Lois Lane? Definitely not Diana. Like Superman, Wonder Woman is a larger-than-life figure living in a world of constant danger. Lois often brushes up against Superman's world, but most of her time is spent in the real world, the everyday world with which the reader can identify. She represents us, the people Superman fights for, as opposed to Diana, who represents the people Superman fights with or against. Lois has no powers, but she's every bit as worthy to stand alongside Superman, to share his triumphs and tragedies, as any superhero. I love Diana, but I'm a traditionalist. She belongs with Steve Trevor, who, like Lois, was in the hero's first adventure. He's not always been a great character, I admit, but that's not his fault. It's bad writing. But now Sterling Gates has written a great Steve in Forever Evil Argus, one who's well able to hold his own alongside Diana. Let Lois be with Superman and Steve be with Wonder Woman. Heck, they can even double date, but no more mixing up the partners.
thank you, Martin. Good to get an audio answer. We hadn't had one for a while, so thank you, Martin, there for your thoughts on this question. Next up, we have Hector. He writes in and says, Superman and Wonder Woman, because at least they will be together forever. With Lois, she's going to be old and die. I love Lois, but it better for Superman to be Superman than to be sad and cause havoc. Yeah, I mean, we have these idea of Lois will die one day, but in comic books, really, it just keeps getting refreshed and rebooted, and so Lois, well, we might have a story here and there in some kind of an alternate Earth or a different continuity where Lois dies and Superman has to deal with that, like in Kingdom Come, and in the current, Injustice, but it's not really going to be something that we'll see in main continuity because they're forever 30 years old or whatever they are.
That's right. Big Bird has like a 6th birthday every year. Rick Lee James wrote, I have a feeling this will be an incredibly unpopular opinion, but I'm pulling for Wonder Woman. I've been enjoying the dynamic in the Superman Wonder Woman comics. As a person who's happily married to a supportive, understanding woman who can relate to a lot that I've been through, I feel like Superman benefits from having a relationship with someone who can understand what it means to be different. I love Lois Lane, but Wonder Woman gets my vote for now.
Well, thank you, Ricky Lee James. I mean, that's... it's a very well thought out answer and, very reasonable. So while it might be unpopular to people who want Lois Lane as Superman's love interest, I don't think it's incredibly unpopular, as we've seen.
No, and it makes sense. A lot of the statements there, she will be able to experience much of what he experiences, whereas Lois just simply can't. So
yeah, I mean, people are saying that Wonder Woman and Superman don't have anything in common, that they're totally opposite, because he grew up in Kansas and, is a human being first and foremost in his upbringing. But I think what Superman and Wonder Woman do have a lot in common in their superhero lives, obviously. So and they are standing apart from the general populace. So there is definitely some kind of crossover there in their knowledge and experiences.
Agreed.
Now, Argent L, one of our regulars, writes in. She says, hi, Steve, Scotty. So the question is Superman Wonder Woman or Superman Lois Lane? Sorry?
I said hello to Argent L.
Hello, okay. Not much difference there, as both ladies are superheroes in my book. Diana's an Amazon goddess, but Lois Lane is not what I'd call everyday normal. Maybe for tradition's sake I will want Clark to end up with Lois, but to tell you the truth, I'd be more interested in seeing Superman date regular, a bit overweight but working on it woman. Just saying, for no particular reason that I can think of. Okay. Maybe an insight.
Someone has a crush.
Yes, that's what I was thinking. Okay, what's our new big question for this upcoming month?
This month's question is, what are your thoughts on Superman, Batman, and Captain America going head-to-head for the same release date?
Yeah, Scotty and I have mentioned this and talked about it a number of times. Michael and I have spoken about it on our live show. It's a topic that we've given our opinions on, but now we want your thoughts on this going head-to-head on the same release date with the two superhero franchises. Get involved with the Big Question segment of our show by clicking on the Big Question button found at the Superman homepage, Radio KAL webpage, or you can send in an audio answer, as we had here today by Martin Gray. And we will play that or read out those thoughts here in our next Radio KAL podcast.
Only one thing alive about the full
It's time now for the super secret Sound-Byte. Last month's sound came from the pilot episode of the Lois and Clark TV series.
Well, one thing's for sure, nobody's going to be looking at your face.
And a whopping 25 people guessed it correctly. Steve, why don't you tell us who they were?
I knew you'd do that. Peter Kern, Jeremy Crawford, Nelda Mormon, Dan Bogdoyan, Trent Brewer, Donovan Hunter, Fred Walsh, Rick Ruiz, Lynn S.M., Brandon Whitmore, John, Matthew Balch, Chris G., Brad Glynn, Jack Teague, AJ Mason, Patrick O'Neill, Martin Gray, Dave Booth, Ralston Starler, Tommy Nyman, Barda Sosa, Andy Maples, Rick Lee James, and Argent L. Congratulations to those 25 people for guessing where that super secret soundbite came from.
It's a ton of people. Good job.
Yeah. Now let's see if we can get more than 25 people to guess where in the world this new super secret soundbite comes from.
And I solemnly swear to all of you that I will continue to uphold the ideals of truth and justice, not just for America, but for all the world.
Well, if you think you know where in the world of Superman that sound came from, use the super secret Sound-Byte entry form to send in your answer. Everyone who guesses it right will have their name read out here on our next Radio KAL podcast.
I think that might be from the new animated Adventures of Superman show that just came out.
Yeah, I'd heard about that one. I think it was called Superman and the Adventures of Scotty V.
It might be. It might be. You'll have to wait and see. Let's get on to the Superman comedy sketch, though.
I'm laughing at you, you hear? Laughing!
Yes, this week, or this month I should say, sorry, we have a sketch all about X-ray vision. I'm not sure where it's come from. It's been passed to me, so to play here on our podcast. So here it is. It's a little bit funny, a little bit naughty, a little bit raunchy, but definitely still within our parameters. Superman and his X-ray vision.
Jimmy Olsen!
Yes, Chief?
Don't call me Chief.
Sorry, Chief.
All right, I need Lois Lane and Clark Kent in my office pronto. Lex Luthor's got a hidden death ray aimed at the mayor's house, and I need my best reporters on that story.
I'm right here, Mr. White, but I haven't seen Lois.
Well, you better find her, Kent.
Gee whiz!
Now, Jimmy. No need for that kind of language.
Hello, Clark. Jimmy.
Miss Lane.
Lois? Are you all right? You're walking strangely.
I just got back from my doctor. He told me I have radiation burns on 80% of my body. It's like a giant sunburn.
Radiation?
Yes. It's the oddest thing. He said it was like I'd been X-rayed 12 times a day.
How strange.
I mean, there's nothing from my neck up, just my clothed area, especially around here.
Well, there are lots of things that could cause that aren't someone looking at you with X-ray vision.
What?
Well, I'm just saying, there's no reason to believe anyone's checking you out through your clothes.
Hey, Miss Lane, the chief wants to see you. Mr. Luthor has a hidden ray gun somewhere in the city aimed at the mayor.
Right, let's think about that and put all this talk of your clothes behind us.
What?
I said Luthor has a hidden ray gun. But don't worry, Superman will find it with his X-ray vision.
Or other powers. Superman has lots of other powers, like super speed, super strength, or flight. Maybe the ray gun's on a roof.
But with his X-ray vision, he could just look around the city and see through anything. Man, what would you do if you had X-ray vision, Mr. Kent?
Be respectful of other people's personal boundaries.
I guess so.
Did it just get warm in here?
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to,
Didn't mean to what?
Nothing. Yes, Superman will find Luthor no matter underwhere he is. Underwire he is. Panties. Bruce Wayne is Batman, right?
Bruce Wayne is Batman?
Yes. Now let's all write up that story. Ooh, what a scoop. Did you hear that, everyone? Bruce Wayne is Batman. A Daily Planet exclusive.
Well, there you have it. Funny stuff there. Superman giving Lois a bit of a sunburn.
Yeah.
Say no more. All right, let's move into our song segment.
This month's Superman song is Sunset Superman by the heavy metal band Dio from the 1987 album Dream Evil. You can check out the official Ronnie James Dio website at ronniejamesdio.com.
Yes, and we don't play much heavy metal. It's not really that heavy, but here it is, Sunset Superman by Dio. Well, there you have it.
I'm head banging right
yes,
now.
I heard you banging your head against the desk there. Are you okay?
No, I'm good.
Yeah.
Little desk burn, but it's all right.
Very good. Well, that is our show for another month. Now, remember, we are open to your suggestions and your requests. If you have a song that you would like us to play, is there a comedy sketch that you know of? We're getting short on numbers for those. If there's anything you'd like to hear played back here, or a topic you think that we need to be discussing that we've missed out on, all those kinds of suggestions can be sent to us here at the Superman homepage. If you want to email us, my email address is steve@supermanhomepage.com. If you want to get in touch with Scotty, his is scotty@supermanhomepage.com. Also, we have the KAL feedback form on the website that you can use to get in touch with us to send suggestions on this show. Now, that is our show for this month. Thank you, Scotty.
Thank you, Steve. And remember, everybody, always look up in the sky.
You've been listening to Radio KAL, brought to you by supermanhomepage.com.